I was just the new hire at his company when our eyes first met. He was engaged to a socialite, yet something sparked between us. I never imagined a billionaire would risk everything to pursue me, a black woman who came from nothing. This is my unbelievable true story. I never expected my life to turn into something out of a romance novel. Growing up in Detroit, I was always the practical one. Straight A's, first in my family to go to college, and determined to make something of myself. Mom raised me with two mantras: education is your ticket, and twice as good to get half as far. By 25, I had my MBA and was hustling through entry level finance jobs, living in a tiny apartment with my roommate Kira, and dreaming of the day I'd finally pay off my student loans. When Maxwell Industries posted that executive assistant opening, it was way above my pay grade, but something told me to shoot my shot. The interview process was brutal. 4 rounds of increasingly intimidating people asking increasingly difficult questions. When they called with the job offer, I literally fell off my couch. Double my previous salary, benefits that actually covered things, and a corner office with a view. I celebrated by ordering takeout instead of cooking ramen for the first time that month. My first day at Maxwell Industries, I was a bundle of nerves in my one good suit, armed with coffee and determination. The orientation was standard: paperwork, security badges, awkward introductions. Then at 2 p.m., I was scheduled to meet my new boss, Maxwell Reed himself. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending to another world. His assistant, well, the other assistant, Charlotte, barely looked at me before waving me into his office. I'll never forget that moment. He was standing at the window, phone to his ear, silhouette framed by the city skyline. When he turned around, time seemed to slow down. Our eyes locked, and he stopped mid sentence on his call. For 3 full seconds, yes, I counted, neither of us said a word. Then he smiled, ended his call, and walked over to shake my hand. "You must be Zara," he said, my name sounding different in his voice. That handshake lasted just a beat too long, and I felt something I couldn't explain, like recognition, like we'd met before in another life. If you've ever felt someone was drawn to you despite impossible circumstances, stay with me. My story might just give you the courage to believe in yourself when the world says you shouldn't. Hit subscribe and let's dive in, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about love, power, and my own worth. Those first few weeks at Maxwell Industries were a blur of learning names, navigating office politics, and trying not to spill coffee on important documents. I was determined to prove myself, arriving an hour early and leaving long after everyone else. Maxwell, Mr. Reed, as I forced myself to call him professionally, was surprisingly hands-on with projects, which meant I saw him daily. Each time, that same electric current seemed to pass between us, but I'd remind myself of the gossip I'd heard from Charlotte during my second week. "That's Eliza Chamberlain," she'd whispered, showing me a society page on her phone. The woman was stunning, blonde, willowy, old money written all over her. She and Max have been engaged for 6 months, the wedding set for spring at her family's estate in the Hamptons. Charlotte looked at me meaningfully. "Just so you know." I nodded, message received, and tucked away any inappropriate thoughts about my boss. He was taken. End of story, except it wasn't. During a late night deadline crunch, Maxwell ordered dinner for the team. As people filtered out around midnight, somehow we ended up alone in the conference room. "You've been impressive," he said, leaning against the table close to my chair. "Most people take months to get up to speed." I thanked him, trying to ignore how his rolled up sleeves revealed forearms that belonged in a watch commercial. "Where did you learn to analyze market trends like that?" he asked. What should have been a 5 minute conversation stretched to 2 hours, talking about economics, our families, books we loved. I noticed he never once mentioned his fiancée. When he walked me to my car that night, his hand briefly touched the small of my back. Just a second of contact, but it felt like being branded. I drove home with the windows down, needing the cold air to clear my head. Things shifted after that night. He'd find reasons to stop by my office, questions that could have been emails, documents that needed urgent review. During meetings, I'd catch him watching me when I spoke, Once he brought me coffee exactly how I liked it, something I'd never told him. I pay attention, he said simply when I asked how he knew. The day I knew I was in trouble was when he called me to his office to review a presentation. As I leaned over his desk pointing out a slide, our hands brushed. Neither of us pulled away. For 5 full heartbeats, we just stayed there, barely touching but completely connected. When I finally looked up, the expression in his eyes made my knees weak. Zara, he said softly, and in that moment, I knew we were both falling into something dangerous. Something that felt impossible to stop. After that day in his office, I tried to create distance. I scheduled meetings via Charlotte instead of directly with him. I ate lunch at my desk or out of the building. I even started dating someone, a nice guy named Marcus who worked in IT, hoping it would redirect my wayward feelings. But Maxwell was persistent in ways I never expected from a man whose net worth had 9 zeros. I need you on this Tokyo deal, he announced one morning, dropping a folder on my desk. We fly out next Tuesday. When I pointed out that Charlotte typically handled his travel arrangements, he replied without hesitation, I need your specific expertise on this one. His eyes held mine, daring me to challenge him. I should have. Instead, I nodded and accepted the folder with trembling fingers. Tokyo was equal parts professional success and emotional disaster. By day, I was the consummate professional, taking notes, offering insights, impressing Japanese executives with the few phrases I'd learned on the flight over. By night, over sake and exquisite food, the lines blurred. On our last evening, walking back to the hotel after dinner, he pulled me into a quiet garden. I can't stop thinking about you, he confessed. I've tried, God knows I've tried. The moonlight carved shadows across his face as he stepped closer. Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll never mention it again. I couldn't lie, not to him, not to myself, but I also couldn't ignore reality. You're engaged, Maxwell, I whispered, my voice breaking. Whatever this is between us, it can't happen. I walked away, spent the night crying, and maintained strict professionalism on the 14-hour flight home. A week later, Eliza Chamberlain appeared at the office unannounced. Tall, immaculately dressed, she swept through like she owned the place, which, considering her family's significant investment in the company, wasn't entirely untrue. I was reviewing contracts when she walked past my office, pausing when she saw me. You must be the new assistant everyone's talking about, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Before I could respond, Maxwell appeared, tension radiating from him as he escorted her to his office. That afternoon, he found me in the copy room. Zara, about earlier? I cut him off. You don't owe me explanations about your fiancé. His hand caught mine as I tried to leave. What if I told you things with Eliza aren't what they seem? The electricity between us intensified as he moved closer. What if I told you I haven't been able to sleep, eat, or think straight since I met you? His voice dropped to a whisper. What if I told you that for the first time in my life, I'm willing to risk everything? I withdrew my hand. Then I'd say you need to figure out what you really want before someone gets hurt. But as I walked away, my heart hammering against my ribs, I already knew it was too late for that warning. Because despite every rational thought screaming caution, despite the whispers that would inevitably follow a black girl from Detroit getting involved with her billionaire boss, despite the diamond ring on Eliza's finger, I was falling in love with him. And the terrifying part was, I believed he was falling for me too. The whispers started 3 months into my time at Maxwell Industries. At first, they were barely perceptible, conversations that stopped when I entered break rooms, curious glances from colleagues during meetings, Charlotte's increasingly cold demeanor. Then one day, my friend Amara from accounting cornered me in the bathroom. People are talking, Zara, she said, concern etched across her face, about you and the boss. My stomach dropped, but I feigned confusion. What are you talking about? Amara wasn't buying it. The late nights. The Tokyo trip, the way he looks at you in meetings like you're the only person in the room. She squeezed my arm. I'm on your side, but you need to be careful. This isn't just about office politics. She didn't have to spell it out. I knew exactly what she meant. As a black woman climbing the corporate ladder, I already had to work twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. Now, people were reducing my capabilities, my education, my work ethic to one damaging narrative. I was sleeping with the boss. Worse, I was trying to steal a white man from his white fiancée. The fact that nothing physical had actually happened between us seemed irrelevant to the rumor mill. That night, my mom called as if sensing my distress from 500 miles away. "Baby, what's wrong?" she asked. I nearly told her everything but couldn't bear the disappointment I knew would follow. Instead, I said I was just tired from work. Before hanging up, she reminded me, as she always did, remember who you are and where you come from. Don't let anyone make you forget your worth. Her words echoed in my head the next day when Maxwell's executive team gathered for the quarterly review. I delivered my presentation flawlessly, but afterward, I overheard Jeffrey from marketing murmur to someone, "Wonder what else she does with that mouth to get promoted so fast." The comment hit me like a physical blow. I locked myself in a bathroom stall, fighting back tears, when my phone buzzed with a text from Maxwell. "Meet me on the roof in 10, need to talk." The rooftop garden was his private retreat. When I arrived, he was pacing, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "I heard what Jeffrey said," he stated without preamble. "He's being terminated today." I was stunned both that Maxwell had heard and at his decisive response. "You can't fire someone for a crude joke," I argued, though part of me wanted exactly that justice. "It'll just validate what everyone's thinking." "And what's that?" he challenged, stepping closer. "That I'm sleeping with you to get ahead. That I'm the stereotypical black girl trying to upgrade by snagging a rich white man. That I don't belong here based on merit." The words poured out, all my fears and frustrations crystallizing. His expression softened. "Zara, you are the most brilliant person in this company, myself included. Anyone who can't see that isn't paying attention." He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "It's not that simple and you know it," I said. "Every time you single me out, even for legitimate reasons, it feeds into their narrative. And what about Eliza? The woman you're supposed to marry in 3 months?" My voice cracked on the last question. His jaw tightened. "That's complicated." "Well, uncomplicate it," I demanded, finding strength I didn't know I had. "Figure out what you want, Maxwell, because this limbo is destroying me professionally and personally. Until then, we need to keep our relationship strictly business." I walked away before he could respond, before I could change my mind. For 2 weeks, I maintained rigid professionalism. I redirected his attempts at personal conversation, declined invitations to private meetings, and left precisely at 5 p.m. each day. It was working, or so I thought, until the night of the company gala, when everything imploded spectacularly. The annual Maxwell Industries Gala was the event of the season, a black tie affair at the Langham Hotel, where clients, investors, and employees mingled over champagne and strategic conversation. I'd spent too much on a midnight blue gown that my roommate Kira insisted was worth every penny. I arrived alone, determined to network professionally and avoid Maxwell as much as possible in a room of 300 people. That plan evaporated the moment I walked in and felt his eyes find me across the crowded ballroom. He was standing next to Eliza, looking impossibly handsome in a tuxedo, yet his attention was fixed entirely on me. I grabbed a champagne flute from a passing server and made my way to Amara's table, forcing myself to engage in conversation while acutely aware of his gaze following me. An hour into the evening, the room fell silent as Maxwell took the stage. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice echoing through the sound system. My heart stuttered as Eliza joined him, radiant in designer couture. "As many of you know, Eliza and I have been together for 2 years." He turned to her, took her hand, and in that awful moment, I knew what was coming. "Tonight, I'm honored to announce that we've set our wedding date for June 15th. Applause erupted as he kissed her cheek for the cameras. I sat frozen, champagne untouched, as something inside me shattered. Amara squeezed my hand under the table, but I barely felt it. I excused myself, needing air, escape, anything but the sight of their perfect engagement. In the hotel's garden, I gulped the cool night air, fighting back tears that threatened to ruin my carefully applied makeup. I was so absorbed in pulling myself together that I didn't hear the footsteps behind me. Zara. His voice was soft, tentative. I turned to find Maxwell standing there, hands in his pockets, conflict written across his features. Please let me explain. There's nothing to explain, I replied, proud of how steady my voice sounded despite the hurricane inside me. You made your choice, I respect that. I moved to walk past him, but he gently caught my arm. It's not what you think, he insisted. The engagement announcement was Eliza's father's idea, the merger between our companies. Stop, I cut him off. Don't tell me this is about business. Don't make it worse by lying. I'm not lying. His voice rose slightly before he controlled it again. Yes, I proposed to her last year. Yes, we're officially engaged. But since I met you, he stepped closer, his eyes intense. Nothing has felt right with her. I've been trying to find a way out that doesn't destroy two family legacies. I shook my head, backing away. And in the meantime, you thought you'd what? Keep me on the hook, have your respectable fiancé for the board members and your black mistress for excitement? He flinched as if I'd slapped him. Is that really what you think of me, of yourself? The question hit home. What did I think of myself? Was I really willing to be the other woman? To compromise my values, my mother's teachings, my own self respect for a man who, regardless of his inner conflict, was publicly committed to someone else? I think, I said slowly, finding clarity in the moment, that I deserve more than crumbs from someone else's table. I think that you need to figure out your life, and I need to figure out mine. And I think, my voice finally broke, I think I need to tender my resignation. His face paled. Don't leave the company, please. Your career shouldn't suffer because of me. I laughed without humor. My career is already suffering. Every accomplishment I achieve is tainted by whispers that I earned it on my back. I need a fresh start, Maxwell. Somewhere my talent speaks for itself. He reached for me again, desperation in his eyes. I love you, Zara. I've never said that to anyone and meant it until you. For one breathless moment, I allowed myself to feel the weight of those words, to imagine a world where they could be enough. Then I gently removed his hand from mine. If that's true, I whispered, then you know what you need to do. But whatever you decide, I've made my choice. I choose me. I walked away from him that night with tears streaming down my face, but my head held high. The next morning, my resignation letter was on Charlotte's desk before the office officially opened. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones we make not because we want to, but because we have to, for our own salvation, for our own peace, for the person we hope to become. That was 2 years ago. Sometimes life takes you down unexpected paths, and where you end up isn't where you thought you'd be, it's somewhere better. After leaving Maxwell Industries, I spent 3 weeks on my mom's couch in Detroit, crying and second guessing my decision. Then one morning, she sat beside me, handed me coffee, and said, Enough. Your grandmother didn't march in Selma for you to waste your talents pining over some man. She was right, as mothers usually are. I picked myself up, revamped my resume, and started interviewing. A month later, I was hired by a female owned financial consulting firm where my abilities were recognized without question. 6 months in, I was leading my own team. By the end of that first year, I'd nearly doubled my Maxwell Industries salary and was featured in a Rising Stars in Finance article. Did Maxwell try to contact me? Yes, more times than I care to admit. Calls, texts, even flowers to my new office. 3 months after I left, the business pages announced his broken engagement to Eliza, citing irreconcilable differences. A week later, he was at my door, telling me he'd ended things, that he was free to pursue what we'd started. Part of me wanted to fall into his arms, to believe in the fairy tale ending. But I'd changed. The woman who left that rooftop garden wasn't the same one who stood before him now. I'd discovered my own worth, not as reflected in a powerful man's eyes, but as measured by my own standards. I told him I needed time. That if what we felt was real, it would survive me establishing myself independently first. That loving someone shouldn't mean sacrificing yourself. Was it easy? No, but it was necessary for both of us. Today, Maxwell and I are, well, that's a story for another video. But I will say this, true love doesn't ask you to diminish yourself. It doesn't thrive in shadows or ask you to accept less than you deserve. Real love, whether it comes from a partner, from friends, or from yourself, amplifies your light rather than dimming it. I look back on that chapter of my life not with regret, but with gratitude. I learned that my worth isn't determined by who wants me, but by who I choose to be. I learned that sometimes the most romantic decision is choosing yourself first. And I learned that my mom's lessons about working twice as hard weren't just about professional success. They were about maintaining my dignity and self respect in a world that doesn't always make that easy for women who look like me. So, if you're watching this and facing a similar crossroads, torn between heart and head, between what's easy and what's right, remember this: you are the author of your own story. Not society, not your family, not even the person you love. You get to decide how your narrative unfolds. And sometimes the most courageous plot twist is walking away, even when every fiber of your being wants to stay. If my story resonated with you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that they deserve to be chosen, not just pursued. Drop a comment below about a time you had to choose yourself first. And don't forget to subscribe for more real life stories that most people are afraid to tell. Because when we share our truths, we never know whose life we might be changing, including our own.